Well, Oli, that question was asked several times, and the answer we have right now is that City Power and Eskom are in conversation. They are engaging on the matter, and we will get more clarity on whether City Power will be able to provide this at a later date, which we assume will be in the near future, most likely in the next day or two. We'll hear an answer from that. But more than just City Power and Eskom, Eskom's challenges are significant. They are many. And Mr. Jan Oberholzer, who's the Chief Operating Officer, is here with me now to give us a sense of which ones they're going to tackle first out of this elephant that is Eskom and its many challenges. I think we should start with today and the ongoing blackouts, the load shedding that has happened so far in this last week, which was unexpected, but has happened. Give us a sense. You explained to me that it was that the reserves were already strained, and so those are the reasons that we're seeing the load shedding we're seeing right now?
That's correct. We had a number of breakdowns that we did not foresee that will happen. So what that did is it meant that the available capacity was less without these units. So we then had to use more of our dams, our water, and then also the open cycle gas turbines, diesel. So we even had to use it during the day. And when you start using that extensively, you get to a stage that your dam levels are falling, your diesel levels are falling, you cannot supply to the demand, at the time with your available capacity. And then what happens, you are facing a very dangerous situation. Because if you continue with that and you lose some more of the generating units and you do not have emergencies, you may go into a very high level of load shedding. So this is where we found ourselves. We had lost a lot of generating units. We used extensively diesel and water, and up to a stage that we had to say, up to here and not further. Unfortunately, we have to implement load shedding in order to protect the integrity of the system and not to let the levels of the water and the diesel go lower even more.
If the system is compromised in this way right now, and it will take a little while to get it back online, we are looking towards the national or the local government elections coming up just next week. Can you give any kind of guarantee that there will be consistent power supply, not just for the day, but for the days after where the voting happens or counting happens?
Yeah, we're going to try our best, absolutely. Look, the loss of Koeberg unit number 1 yesterday morning just before 4 o'clock meant 920 megawatts. That is reliable that we lost from the system. So currently we're working and getting ready to return that unit. So hopefully by the early hours of Thursday morning, that unit will be synchronized to the grid again. And by late weekend, we will have it on full load again. We have the negative aspect at this point in time that Medupi 4, is out at 720 megawatts. Kendall 1, which is 640 megawatts, that is out. However, we looked at the system and we believe during this time now, also what is important, we managed with the load shedding to fill the diesel and the water levels. When we started this morning at 5 o'clock when we had our system briefing, we saw that the dam levels were full and the diesel, at Gaurikwa Mossel Bay it was 100% and down at Ankerlig it was just over 75%. So we believe where we find ourselves now, and to make sure tonight and tomorrow night we don't use any of the emergency, then we will be ready and for the election. The period leading up, the election and the period thereafter.
Mr. Oberholzer, you've just mentioned 3 units that are currently down right now. That equates to around 1,500, nearly 2,000 megawatts of power that is just lost. And this seems to be a trend that is continuing with Eskom. We thought things would be getting better, but more and more units seem to be crashing, and we seem to be experiencing more load shedding this year alone than we had last year in its entirety. How do we reconcile the plan to build and rebuild Eskom with what we're seeing right now?
Yeah, we still find ourselves in a very difficult situation. The system is unreliable and unpredictable. Now, you're talking about the load shedding, yes, 32 days year to date since the 1st of April. That is quite a number of days. And if you compare it to last year, 47 in total. But let's unpack it. We had Koeberg Unit 1 that was on an outage. That was delayed for quite some time. Now that had a negative impact, and it had obviously a contributing impact to load shedding. Now we've lost it again. So it is really, if Koeberg is so important for the generation capacity of the country. So when you lose a unit there, you immediately, because it's 1,000 megawatts, that is one phase of load shedding that you're talking about. Medupi, we didn't foresee at all. That explosion in the generator, we didn't foresee. The burn, the fire in the Kendall generator transformer, that we didn't foresee. Those are over and above, the normal day-to-day, unfortunately, breakages that we do have. So it is putting a lot of strain on the system, and you're right, 2,300 megawatts to be precise. So 920, we hope we will have it back by the end of the weekend. But for the rest, we'll have to deal and see how we're going to deal with it.
Mr. Obahoza, unplanned, unforeseen, unreliable power supplies. Speaking of unforeseen, why is your chief executive not here?
No, in all fairness, he's got an important, what do you call these? We've got a very important time that is waiting for him. He's going to attend COP26. Now, Eskom, where we find ourselves and that we want to participate in clean energy going forward, that means there are a lot of aspects that needs to be dealt with, one being finance, etc. So this is what he's dealing with. And I believe that he has the confidence in myself and the rest of my colleagues, to run the system. So it is not because it's not a lack of, not he wanted to be here, but he has other commitments at this point in time.
Understood. Mr. Obahoza, another question to you about Medupi specifically. The last time we had an update from Eskom, it was around the release of the financial results. There was that explosion at Medupi. Investigations were underway. Team members had been suspended. Are they still under suspension? Have they been fired? Or can we put to bed this idea that there was some sort of sabotage at that plant?
I can confirm at this point in time the investigation is not complete, but we don't suspect any sabotage. We believe it may have been not following procedures. So this is what is coming out. So the investigation will be concluded soon. So the individuals, my colleagues, are still on suspension. So up until we finish the investigation as such. But no, we don't suspect any sabotage. We believe rather it is not following procedures, a lack of experience, and I think that's what happened.
Medupi and Kusile were big focus areas over the last decade or so, given that they were such expensive projects and the new build. But now we sit here with your new operational update, and you tell us there are 3 older stations that actually need a lot more attention and a priority from you. Give us a little bit more about what's happening at those 3 stations and how much they contribute to our grid.
Look, if you take Tetuka, that's 3,600 megawatts. If you take Duva, that's about 3,000 megawatts. And if you take Kendall, that is big stations, that's about 4,000 megawatts. And those 3 stations consistently is not performing well because of it's been neglect in the past. So we're working hard to get them back. And as I said during my presentation, if we can get those stations just to perform at 70% availability, we will immediately take the capacity available for the whole generation from the current 65 to in the 70s, the low 70s. So that's where a lot of the focus is, to ensure that those 3 power stations, and we will have them up until the end of 2030, that we fix them and that they contribute the way they should be to the economy of the country.
At what cost?
Look, we don't foresee at this point in time to throw just money at it. But we are evaluating unit by unit, component by component, what needs to happen. And that we then look what spares do we have available, because we do have a lot of spares that we are optimizing at this point in time. So it's not just to throw money at it. It's to make sure that whatever we've identified that needs to be replaced and fixed to contribute to the availability of those units, that will be done.
Mr. Obahoza, thank you so much for your time this morning. Colleague, there's Jan Obahoza, just giving us a sense of what is happening at Eskom. As you hear, as they fix one end, another end starts to break. But I guess that is the reality of an old, ailing power utility, and this is where we are. We should expect load shedding for the foreseeable future and possibly for the next few months, barring next week's election. Colleague.